Breaking news late in the day out of New York tonight. NYPD responding to what they've discovered, an envelope that contained white powder that was sent to the New York DA's office, which is conducting the prosecution of Donald Trump. It was addressed to DA Bragg. NBC News reporting this substance, we mentioned this as we were getting the information at the top of the hour, the substance has been deemed non-hazardous. The letter inside insulting, and there are many threats that the DA has been publicizing. We will get into that and why and how that fits into law. This is the DA who indicted Donald Trump. And while these threats are real and proliferate, there is a lot of evidence that not only is he not backing down, but as we've been reporting, he is using a different legal strategy than past prosecutors like Bob Mueller, who have faced this very unruly now defendant, Donald Trump. The DA, in some ways, within the law, is going after Trump with an awareness of Trump's tactics. For example, he had an untraditional arraignment that we went through. For example, yesterday, he did something that we've almost never seen. He went and took a Trump ally in Congress, Chairman Jordan, to court to try to get the jump on, or legally the first move, against this subpoena fight. And putting on record those threats that I mentioned, which are, of course, newly relevant tonight, as well as arguing to a judge that what Jordan is asking for is not a lawful subpoena, but instead an unconstitutional attack. Bragg asked the court to end what he calls a constitutionally destructive fishing expedition and requests that the judge step in now, again, learning past lessons about months of these kind of fights, and saying that subpoenas pursued in this fashion of Bragg or current or former staff should be automatically declared, he says, a declaratory judgment of those subpoenas as invalid. The same filing, which we reported on when the news first broke yesterday, also has a whole section on Trump's ongoing attacks, his public use of his voice, of his interviews, of internet appearances, of internet posts on his platform and others to try to incite, according to the DA, violence against the court system. Now, there's a lot of evidence that threats don't work directly on prosecutors, but I can tell you that pressure and being on reaction and feeling like you have to wait on what Trump or Jim Jordan's going to do, that's certainly got in the mind of other prosecutors. We even saw an entire Mueller probe that at times seemed, in its care and in its careful approach, weeks, if not months, behind the actual public news cycle, which informs people's realities, dealing with Donald Trump as the person under investigation. So all of that, including the new threat to DA Bragg, brings us to our report on this case tonight. And we have very special guests. I mentioned Michael Steele is back, looking at the wider climate and the politics. And joining me tonight as well is the former U.S. attorney in charge of the famed SDNY in New York, David Kelly. I should note he's also my former boss. And I should also note, as we look at Washington, that as a litigator, Mr. Kelly has been called on to represent, among others, James Comey, someone who had a lot of law enforcement background, was a registered Republican, but found himself, like D.A. Bragg, David, sparring with people like Jim Jordan, who, I want to be clear, has every right to oversee the DOJ and to work as a Judiciary Committee chair in the federal realm, but who under traditional law, David, doesn't have jurisdictional oversight of local prosecutors under federalism. So given your extensive experience, we'll get to those threats. But first, what do you think of this approach that D.A. Bragg is taking in trying to protect the independence of his probe from Washington?
I like the approach, and it's a smart approach. And look, the issue is that Congress is granted broad discretion. They have to, in these situations where you try to quash a subpoena or enjoin a subpoena, as they're trying to do here, you have to overcome the broad discretion given to Congress for a legislative purpose. And what they have really done in a very smart way in this lawsuit, Ted Boutros and Mylan Dennerstein and others have painted this whole story out, which makes it clear that this has nothing to do with the legislative purpose. So as difficult it is to overcome, and I've had trouble, as you mentioned, I've litigated this issue, and it's a very difficult hill to overcome, the legislative purpose. But I have to say, of all the cases we've seen challenging the legislative purpose, I think this hill is surmountable. And because of the story that's painted here, so I give them a fighting chance. I don't say they're going to win, but I give them a fighting chance. And I also have to say that Jim Jordan, in I guess an informal response, at least one reported by, among others, Fox News, he's saying that because Congress, Bragg gets federal funds, they have a right to look into this. I just think that makes Bragg's theory even stronger. And if I was the lawyer representing Mr. Bragg here, I would add that to my facts because I think it's a fallacy.
Really interesting coming from you. And as I mentioned, you've actually litigated some of these interbranch issues. Bragg is also using the filing, like he used the arraignment, to really go on offense and be proactive about how Donald Trump has been a threatening and perhaps unlawfully threatening individual and now defendant. And I mention that, David, because, as you know, it has been longstanding practice by many prosecutors to say, we do it by the book. We prove that we're fair by always doing it the same way, uniformity. And in time, justice and truth will prevail. And that's nice. But Michael and I were just talking about all the liars running around confusing everyone in the country. I thought it was striking that the DA's team, Bragg's not personally arguing at the arraignment, but they made a decision. Well, we're not dealing with a normal defendant. So it's going to be a longer arraignment because we have to submit evidence of his attacks. And then in the new filing, I'd like you to respond, David. They say Trump has falsely predicted he would be arrested, so he tried to use that. And since then, the DA has received over 1,000 calls and emails from Trump supporters threatening, racially charged. And then rather than denounce those efforts, House Republicans are, quote, participating in those efforts. Now, that's a heavy accusation to say that the leaders of that committee are right on board with it. But what do you think of, again, this, I would say, somewhat unusual and more proactive posture by Bragg?
Well, it comes back to what I was saying, in painting the facts here to try to overcome this legislative purpose presumption that courts are willing to lend to Congress. This is really part and parcel to make Congress really complicit in the campaign that Trump is trying to run here. And keep in mind also that this is not just a lawsuit naming Congress and Jim Jordan as defendant, but also Mark Pomerantz. So they're really trying to hit two birds with one stone. Really, they're standing here to try to kibosh this subpoena to keep Mark from saying anything more than what he said in his book, but also trying to get his interviews. The injunction to get the subpoena.